Good afternoon, and welcome to the Radically Rural session on clean energy transitions, rural case studies. I am Emily Manns, and I'll be your moderator for today. And I believe I can take my mask off. I'd first like to thank session organizer Mary Ewell for assembling this fabulous group of 3 speakers. Today we have Joshua Meehan, Jude Nuru, and Ryan West. Between our 3 speakers today, we are going to learn about current tools and strategies to overcome the barriers we all face in our transition to a just and equitable clean energy transition. Before I introduce our first speakers, a few housekeeping items. We will hold our Q&A session after all of the presentations today, but please feel free to use the chat to enter your questions for the speakers at any time. In fact, if you would like to take a moment to introduce yourself in the chat and perhaps say the name and size of the rural community that you hold today in your head and in your heart for participating in this Radically Rural Conference and for this session. Then we can share a little bit of community even though we're separated by distance. So, and if you're here in person, of course, you can use the chat or hand in your questions to a session volunteer between speakers or during the Q&A. And if there are many questions, I'll group them into topics, but otherwise we'll just take the questions one by one. So please jump in and ask and ask the things that you need to do in your work in this moment. My experience on this topic is through 2 projects through the Peterborough Energy Committee. We are going to complete this fall solar panels on our high school roof and EV charging station for the public in town. When we started out on these projects, we knew we faced barriers, but they weren't the barriers that ended up being the ones that stood in our way. And with the Conval Solar project, we realized that the school board saw renewable energy as both in opposition to its equitable mission as well as its educational mission. So we learned that as a community. I know we're learning that as a local communities, as a state, as a nation, and I think this kind of networking event is extremely important for us to share the details of how we overcame those barriers. And in this moment, in 2 years ago and last month and next month and in 2 years from now. So we're starting our session with 2 remote presentations. I'll introduce both speakers and then we'll proceed to the online presentations. Following the online presentations, I will introduce our 3rd and final speaker before his live presentation and our Q&A session. So our first speaker today is Ryan West. Ryan is the Director of Grid Modernization Technology for Eversource Energy. Ryan oversees the selection and implementation of new technology that enables the adoption of clean energy and ensures that electric grid can support clean distributed energy resources. I hope everyone listening is as excited as I am to hear about the innovations and opportunities for distributed energy resources that Ryan implements and sees coming in the next months and years. Previously, Ryan was involved in the engineering and design of New Hampshire's electric distribution system and distribution automation. So go ahead and fire your technical questions. They don't have to be perfect. He'll figure out what you're asking and what you need to know and how he can help you. Ryan has a master's in electrical engineering and computer engineering from Worcester Polytechnic and a Bachelor of Science in electrical engineering from Merrimack College in Andover. Following Ryan's presentation, we will go right into a presentation by Jude Nuru. He is Director of Community Solar Initiatives at Revision Energy. Jude has an academic background that includes several degrees, including a doctorate degree in environmental studies from our very own Antioch University here in Keene. Like Ryan, Jude applies his academics, leading Revision Energy on community solar projects for low to moderate income communities of all kinds. He is currently leading Revision Energy on a community solar drive for schools and nonprofits across New Hampshire, and his current goal is to provide these schools and nonprofits a transition to clean energy at no cost. So please go to the conference speaker bios tab to, after the presentations, to review Jude and Ryan's other interests, accomplishments, and educational achievements. So now please join me in welcoming Ryan West and Jude Nuru to present on clean energy transition rural case studies.
All right, thank you, Emily. Appreciate the introduction, and appreciate the opportunity here to speak on behalf of Eversource. Just a quick fun fact: Emily mentioned my background has worked in New Hampshire, but also a resident of the state, and so New Hampshire has a very near and dear place in my heart, and making sure that we set up New Hampshire for our future success. So looking forward to the conversation today. I have put together my presentation, then also looking forward to the Q&A at the end to kind of go through even some more of the questions and perspectives, because I'm sure we've got a vast, diverse audience here. So looking forward to that conversation as well. So with that, I'm going to share my screen. And let's see. So I'm going to jump in here. So I hope, or maybe most of you know Eversource. So Eversource, but I'll go quickly through what the company is and what our our underlying objectives are, and then I'll walk through my presentation. So Eversource is a utility company. We have over 3.6 million electric and natural gas customers, and we have service territories in Connecticut, Massachusetts, and New Hampshire. In New Hampshire, we are the largest electric utility, and serving the Keene area where most of you are today. And you can see on the map there to the right, a large portion of the state is under our service. As far as Eversource in general, one thing I'd like to talk about too is we're in the clean energy track here, and wanted to point out that Eversource is very much committed to adoption of clean energy. So we've been recognized for multiple years, second year in a row, and really as in our industry, a top success story for environmental protection and really supporting clean energy initiatives in our area and across the region. And then also on the social side of that perspective, we very much promote diverse and inclusive workforce, even thought process. And you'll see in my presentation here, we're really interested to try to incorporate all of the different stakeholders in all of our regions and really work towards finding the new and innovative ways to provide clean power to New Hampshire and really all of our states. And we benefit from having this vast footprint where internally at Eversource we can learn different applications across our 3 states, and we are able to leverage the approaches that we use in New Hampshire or Massachusetts or Connecticut and how they apply to different customers. And no different for rural communities. We have rural communities throughout New Hampshire and Massachusetts and in Connecticut where there are some applications and technologies that we can apply and utilize and learn from how we use those in different areas. So that's Eversource as a whole. And today, what I wanted to talk through is Emily mentioned that my role is really we're working on new technologies in order to adopt and integrate clean energy into our distribution system. And so from our perspective, I wanted to give you where we see the problem and underlying issues as we are designing and building our grid. And then I'll talk through some of the opportunities here as we go forward. So to start, we have an underlying issue currently going on with this clean energy, I'll say revolution or evolution. And the issue is kind of twofold, and it has a location aspect to it and also a time aspect. And the combination create a very complex situation in which we are actively trying to resolve and look at new technologies and new ways and innovative ways to handle the combined problem. So to start, on the top here on my picture, location, in real estate, it's location, location, location. We're seeing the same issues on our distribution grid. It really is very dependent on location of our infrastructure, and the impact to that infrastructure is heavily dependent on where we see new clean energy sources coming on and connecting, and also how we're using electricity and power. The combination of those two things, it becomes very important on where that happens. And so that picture that I have here is actually in some of our infrastructure in the Keene area. And what we're showing in the highlights of the different colors is an analysis that we do, or we can do with some new technologies, to identify areas that are set up for and easier to connect clean energy resources. And then there are areas of our system that are more difficult. And it's particularly interesting, in rural communities, the infrastructure was not necessarily built, right, for all of clean energy. And we talk about solar, and we talk about energy storage, and all of the different players too, where it can be customers, and it can be large community solar, and it can be even industrial size, and then independent generators. All of that complexity can show up essentially physically. It can come anywhere. And then what we're challenged with is looking at our infrastructure and understanding what are the limitations there. And so and that picture is just a small snapshot of, and we're focused in on Keene. And you can, if you extrapolate that out, we see these issues across all of New Hampshire and in other states as well, where we have certain areas of our system that just wasn't prepared and wasn't built necessarily for large amounts of clean energy. So it's a challenge on where things are coming in and where we see the growth. So then you've got location. If you combine that, on the other side of the coin here, we have a time problem. And really, this is what we're showing here is one perspective on solar generation, and it depends on different sources of energy, but this is a really good example, and where we see the most growth is in solar and people adopting that, whether it's on rooftops or even larger developments. And so the time angle here that we run into a lot, and what we're seeing on our infrastructure, is throughout the course of a day, and you can see in the graph, we have our load, which is in the green, right? That's electrical demand and energy that we have to supply, right? Electricity, everyone relies on it heavily, and that has a flow to it, right, throughout the day. And if you overlay that with solar supply, which is in the orange there, solar supply typically, and it will come in during the day, right, as expected. And that's actually, there's a challenge with when we see electrical load comes in later in the day, and now you have this mismatch in time as far as clean energy, low carbon emission. We got very, very good clean energy resources going on in the middle of the day, but then people are using electricity later on in the day, and we have this mismatch in where that energy comes from. And so when we talk about new technologies and also clean energy supplies, it is a very much a location and a time-based issue, and we're trying to solve and help make sure our infrastructure is in place to handle both physically where things are going, and also really hopefully we create a platform where we can to support energy resources throughout the day at any time, and wherever technology may go in the future, we want to be able to support that. So that's our underlying issue that we're watching. And I'll add from my perspective, we have differing. This is largely driven by some regulation and policy at the state levels, and so we actually we're in a unique position at Eversource to see some of the developments in different areas of our territory are ahead of other states, and so we're watching trends in one area and seeing how those play out in others, and being able to make sure we're learning from some of those trends and making sure that we have, again, the technology and the tools in place to really be inclusive of any type of clean energy solution that may come up. So that's our root problem. If I wanted to just dig in a little bit, and not to, we won't go, and I know I'm an engineer at heart, so graphs and these fancy graphs look awesome to me, but we'll go just high level and touch on hammer home some of the timing perspective. And really, if this chart, what I wanted to pull out is electric vehicles, and we talk a lot about the electrification of our transportation being a critical key to getting to reduce carbon emissions and clean environment, right? So the one thing that we're looking at and the impact of that is if you look at this chart again from left to right, you have 24 hours in a day, and you can see the curve is the top black line there is what we see for electric demand on our system. And the differing levels is essentially when solar power comes on, right? In the middle of the day, it definitely helps with our load, and it would help reduce the energy demand on the system, right? The problem that we're seeing is if you take electric vehicles as a test case or use case, electric vehicle charging, if you project that out and you start to see more charging happens at evening when people get home, or even if you think about fleets, if a lot of the work is done during the day and now we're charging overnight, you'll notice that peak at the 20th hour there, 21st hour, the bullet at the top right. That peak still today is where we have a peak demand on our system, and now when we talk about electric vehicles coming into the mix, there's potential for that to now increase and get worse. So we're trying to manage again how we see these trends, and we see the demand and the interest in electric vehicles, for example, and we're trying to understand how do we create our infrastructure and technology to enable those to enable electric vehicles. And ensure that not only can any customer wants to connect their EV, but also at the same time, we can maintain a reliable and stable system. So again, this is just to walk through that time perspective, give a little more detail on the projections, and you can see throughout the day, those are different levels of expected solar generation, and so it can vary depending on output and the weather, and so there's a lot of variability that we as the grid operator are very much challenged with in trying to again maintain safe and reliable power while creating a platform that we can connect all of this clean energy. So that's our problem and an example of what we're seeing today. And we're again trying to work towards looking out as different policies and as technology in the different industries continues to expand. We're looking at, as far as the impacts in these areas is really critical for us. So as if you have that problem in mind, what I wanted to do just to give a little bit of the history and where we're at Eversource and our distribution system. So quickly in this system, if you can think about it's we went from pre-1990 is a really good line in the sand around the system itself was very much designed to take large generation and take it and pass it on all the way down to customers' houses, right? So if you think about, you got a single generator and you have one way power flow. So it's coming from that one source and it's going all the way out to all of our customers, right? So for the long, for 100 years, we had this system designed for that operating condition. And add to that, we as an operator, we had very limited communications to our system. We had very limited even communications to our crews and to customers and understanding what's happening out in the ends of our circuits. And so for the longest time, we would design and operate to a worst case scenario, right? And that got better in what we categorize in the 1990 to 2018 timeframe. We were able, technology advanced, and we started to actually, introduce solar and DER, distributed energy resources, started to show up on our system, and really that changed this whole design of, we had a single source feeding down to everybody. Now we have multiple little sources. And now the power flow on our system started to go in different directions. And it could be at any, and I mentioned the time of the day, it could be going anywhere. And it was manageable. It was in small numbers. And really, we were able to manage that just based on the design of the system. And in that same time frame over the last 20 years or so, technology also advanced from our communications and our automation capabilities on our system to understand and measure what is exactly going on out at the ends of our circuits, bring that intelligence back, and we can start to make more informed decisions. So then you take the next step forward, and this is the state in which we're sitting here today, and we contemplate these things all the time, and we talk about if solar PV is expanding and other types of distributed generation is expanding, and then electric vehicles are coming, and we talk about demand response, which is actively reducing how much electricity we're using, and then we talk energy storage is another technology. All of these technologies are coming together, and what we're looking at is we have that problem that I walked through, and we have an infrastructure that's I'll say somewhat old, and we're renewing and rebuilding, but we're challenged with taking all of those energy resources and applying them to a system that needs to continue to grow. And what we look at is if we're not coordinated in understanding what's happening at all of the locations throughout our system, we have this path that we could go down, and it could be in two directions, right? So if we head in the bottom direction, I'll say, is if we don't understand and work and collaborate with stakeholders and with our customers, people in general, we will all start throwing our own solutions out there, and very much we could get down to a path of a scenario where the system itself can't just operate, and we'll introduce a bunch of risk to reliability, and really we're going to introduce suboptimal conditions. And so what at Eversource, or what my main role is here, is we look at the top path, and we're trying to work with our stakeholders and customers and enable and make sure we're optimizing all of these different resources and all the different use cases for them, and make sure that they all align. And so that we, first for us is make sure we can improve reliability of our system, improve the power, quality, and efficiency that we deliver. And then the last bullet there is really make sure, we're enabling customers to do, adopt whatever clean energy solution they are looking for, right? And we're working really hard to make sure that last bullet, we stand up a platform, and we want to make sure that whatever new technology comes, we're ready for it. So that's where we're looking very, very much to optimize and how we operate, how we build, and we're really interested in engaging with communities and customers to understand, from their perspective, what are they doing, how does that impact us, and especially in a rural community, we're very much interested because the impact could be, it could be much different than if you're in the, a metro area and we typically have infrastructure in place. And so it's much easier to head down, adopting more DER. So from a rural communities perspective, this is a very important part of working with our community that we are serving and understanding, what are they interested in, what is our customers interested in, and making sure, we're set up for success there. So one technology, and I just take this as one example, and we're working on multiple examples, but one technology that I wanted to touch on that is related to our rural communities is what we're calling our Voltfar Optimization, right? And so that's an engineering term, but really, if you think about, we're trying to optimize the use of power. And so on the top picture is my simplified distribution grid, right? And today we have infrastructure at our substations. We have circuitry running along the roads, and it feeds, all of our customers. And what I've just, kind of illustrated, but in picture form here, you can see as different customers are doing solar panels on their roofs or electric vehicles, or you have industrial customers who have, fleet charging at their parking lots. Each one of those scenarios presents a interesting challenge when we're looking at how we operate that distribution grid. So one tool that we are utilizing to help this is this Voltfar Optimization. So I refer to VVO is the acronym there. But really, what it's doing is so today I got a simplified picture view of this, and hopefully it hangs together here. So today, when you look at this power flow across our system, you can think about today. There's a lot of power at the beginning, and it kind of slopes off as everyone's using it, right? And so if you relate that to the people in the picture, our power is starting out high at the substation, and it tails off as it goes out the circuit, right? And we have ways of controlling that. Historically, that's very limited at our substations. And so what we've looked at is then introducing some technology, if we go forward, where we can start to raise up everybody. And if you take a look at that fence line, right? If we want to get everybody to be able to see the game, we have technology today that can really raise everybody up, and we look out and we watch, watch the game, and we are successful in delivering quality power to everybody. There is inefficiency in this, in that if you take a look at the first person in line, they're already way above the fence, right? And the fence is at their knees or shins. It's inefficient for those folks. We don't need the two boxes to get them all the way up. We could bring them down, right? And then the middle person, maybe we adjust, and the last person, maybe they need the more of the adjustment. And so what this tool is doing in the future state here is really optimizing and utilizing all the resources that we have. So whether it's at our substation, along our circuitry, and what we're trying to get to is this last picture, where if our first person on the circuit doesn't need anything, and we can take that all away, and then the second person, he only needs one box and only enough to get them above the fence, and then the last person really needs the resources. And so there is this tool that we've deployed, and it's very much incorporating all of the customers, and where this applies to rural communities. I think one opportunity that we look forward and we try to deploy more of it. It really does apply to the rural communities, because historically those areas are at the end of our infrastructure, and so they are the third person in line there. And so we do very much look for these opportunities at the ends of our circuits, and we start to optimize the energy that we deliver for those folks. So just one technology, and hopefully the pictures are helpful there, but we can go much further if we want to. But this is one technology in the optimizing state in which we're looking at and trying to really utilize all resources to be more efficient with the energy that we're using. And so I'll end here with my last slide. So what we're looking for at Eversource, and I kind of mentioned along the way, is we're looking to create the opportunities for all customers and stakeholders, and really what we're focused on is making sure we have a platform and that enables clean energy. And so you could name, I got a picture there. There's clean energy technology in that, and there's others. And for every single use case, what we're trying to do is establish a platform that really can adopt anything that comes our way. So and under the bullets there, we've got some examples of where we're working. So, energy storage and solar for homes and businesses. So we're, working towards collaborating with those folks. Smart thermostats and how houses are heating and cooling their facilities, even down to improving access to energy information and in sharing how we use energy. So and I talked about electric vehicles. So those are the areas that we're really focused on and really trying to set up this platform so that we are not we're enabling and not preventing any new clean energy technology that may come our way. So with that, I think I will turn it over to Jude and I'll let him take over. And then at the
Thank you, Ryan, for that wonderful presentation. And thank you, Emily, for the introduction. And thank you to the organizers and all of you passionate stakeholders who have devoted your time to be here for this important summit. When Mary reached out a couple of months ago talking about radically rural, little did she know that I am myself a radically rural person. Because I grew up in a rural setting in Ghana. So I spent most of my formative years there, even though I have been around some big cities like New York City, London, Glasgow in the UK, Lagos, in Nigeria, Accra, in my own country, Ghana. I still always feel that strong connection to rural communities. And so all of my work has been around helping rural communities in one way or the other. To just kickstart, right. So as a rural person, I have been working for Vision Energy as Director of Community Solar Initiatives, focusing on making sure that the energy transition is just and inclusive. And so for today's presentation, I just want to highlight case studies of how Vision Energy and I have been doing this for low moderate income communities and nonprofit in New Hampshire. And as a roadmap, I'll just briefly touch on the climate crisis and end with the benefits of the LMI projects that we have done in the state. All right, so this is not to scare anybody. Don't be scared, even though it looks so scary. This photo is from the IPCC Working Group 6 Assessment Report, which highlights the intensity of the climate crisis we face today. It shows that the world is bleeding. There's no exception from North America to Europe, to Africa, to Asia, to the Middle East. We have lately been experiencing one disaster to the other. And it does tell us the intensity of the climate crisis, and it calls on all of us to take action. And in response to that, our founders, founded very thoughtful leaders, transformational leaders, founded Revision Energy in 2003. nearly 2 decades ago. We have since installed over 10,000 systems across our states of operation, Maine, Mass, and New Hampshire. And this is our workforce. Our workforce comprised of the engineering team, legal, finance, sales, and marketing. And all of us are mission-driven individuals who are motivated to work hard daily to help reduce the carbon emissions that we face today. And we are a little over 300. And because of the good work that we do, we have independent evaluators that have been ranked. We have been ranked as a number among the top 10 solar installers in USA. You can imagine the size of United States. So we coming in the top 10 is really a great achievement, and we are really proud of that. This, as a mission-aligned solar energy company, Revision Energy, we want to lead our local communities in solving the environmental, economic, and social justice that we faced. Economically, we are creating clean jobs that are with decent pay for our employees, that are helping their families to earn a decent living. Environmentally, we are building clean energy systems that are helping to reduce the carbon emissions. And social justice-wise, we are also ensuring that the energy transition we are talking about is all inclusive and just. And we are a benefit corporation. We believe that we can use business as a force for good. And we tend to focus more on the people, planet, before profit. And all the over 300 employees that I just showed earlier on, all of us share in the ownership of this amazing organization. And so for us, we want to live a future, a clean environment and a just society for the future generations. And as you can see in this beautiful photo, the young case, this is the kind of future that we want to build for our future generations. So in trying to make the energy transition just, we have been devising different strategies. All of us might be aware that in the United States, the main driver of solar installation is the federal tax incentives. However, we recognize that entities like nonprofit, low moderate income communities do not have the tax appetite to be able to take out the tax benefit to build these systems for their own benefit. So we have been using different strategies, including grants from the New Hampshire PUC. Every year, the PUC releases a request for proposal, and we apply for grant to build solar systems for the sole benefit of low moderate income communities. We have won a handful of site grants, and I'll be highlighting case studies of some of those projects that we have built using the New Hampshire PUC grant. In addition, we also utilize power purchase agreement. We bring in mission-aligned impact investors who are only seeking concessionary returns on their investment. They build these systems and to the benefit of the low, moderate, and nonprofit at zero cost to them. We also utilize charitable donations like the New Hampshire Charitable Foundation, individual families, entities that are willing to support us. We rely on all of those sources of funding to build these systems for the benefit of low, moderate income communities. In addition, our own in-house, as a mission-aligned organization, really ensuring justice, inclusive transition, we do offer pro bono services when we build these systems. For example, if in a typical commercial installation, if we charge 1% profit margin, in a case we are building a system for the benefit of low, moderate income, we just decide to do it free of charge. We can even donate the panels, and I'll be highlighting an instance of where we have provided that kind of pro bono service. And so, as you can see, this is a beautiful, isn't it beautiful? This is a beautiful array. This is an example of a low moderate income solar installation at Mascoma Meadows, based out in Lebanon. This project was partly funded by the PUC grant and also our power purchasing agreement. In fact, I have to acknowledge the role of the Vermont Law School that collaborated with us on this particular project. Vermont Law School is an important partner in this endeavor. So we built this system that comprised of 384 panels, generating roughly 170,000 kilowatt hours of energy per year, potentially offsetting 267,165 pounds of carbon emissions per year. And all of the benefits are going to the low moderate income members at zero cost to them. In addition, this is an interesting project, Organization for Refugee and Immigrant Success, ORIS for short. This organization is based out in Manchester, and it is an organization that manages low, moderate income farmers who have migrated from various parts of the world, very volatile regions of the world, to settle in the Manchester, Concord area, and are engaging in fresh vegetable, organic vegetable productions that support the New Hampshire food market. And so the PUC, earlier part of this year, released a request for proposal, and we applied for the grant. We won the grant, which will be funded. The PUC will fund half of the total cost of this project. This project is a 100 kilowatt system size that would enhance the productivity of this farm. And so this system has 352 panels that will roughly generate 181,931 kilowatt hours of energy per year, potentially offsetting 287,370 pounds of carbon emissions per year. This project has an interesting component to it. Always participate in the Granite State Market Match. What it means is that recipients of EBT, SNAP beneficiaries, when they spend their money at participating market, which always is a member, they get double value for whatever they buy. So, for example, if an EBT beneficiary spend $10 to buy, say, kale or fresh, vegetable, they get $10 in addition. So it tells us this project is not just going to benefit the low moderate income community, but a wide range of population across New Hampshire. Even though this is not a platform to raise funds or solicit funds, I know Radically Rural will not penalize me for doing this. I want to make a passionate appeal that if you are touched by the good works that we are doing and the benefit of this project, we are currently raising half of the total cost of this project. So if you are willing to support us, you can reach out and help us to raise the other half of the money to complete this project. And this is ORIS also. ORIS, in order to transport their vegetables, their food product across New Hampshire in their fresh state, they needed a van. And we decided to provide pro bono service. As I mentioned earlier on, this is the kinds of support we give from our in-house resources without having to charge anything. So we put 4 panels on this beautiful van that will roughly generate 10,000 kilowatt hours of energy per year, potentially offsetting 15,624 pounds of carbon emissions per year. And this van houses 2 refrigerators and 1 freezer that can transport the foodstuff instead of consumers looking for a place to buy these things, Oris will simply transport these fresh, organic, healthy products to the doorsteps of consumers. And very interesting, Keene Housing. Keene Housing is an affordable organization based in Keene with a mission to reach carbon neutral by 2035. We have done a couple of projects for them through the PPA, and I'm happy Josh, the executive director, is here today, and he will be highlighting more on the different projects that we have done for them. But I'm just going to highlight two. So we built this at Gilson Love Street. Those of you who are very familiar with the geography of Keene, the next time you drive around, you can take a look at these beautiful arrays sitting there, benefiting the tenants of this location. We have 302 panels installed, generating roughly 113,000 kilowatt hours of energy per year, potentially offsetting 176,549 pounds of carbon emissions per year. And this is another one, rural. This is a rural setting, as you can see. This is similar to the background photo of Radically Rural, and this system is another system for the Keene Housing at Harper Acres. And with 300 panels installed, this system is generating roughly 105,592 kilowatt hours of energy per year, offsetting 164,975 pounds of carbon emissions per year. So all of the benefits are, going directly to the low moderate income or non-profit members of the non-profit at no cost to the members, at no cost to them. And so there are various ways that they benefit. We have seen some of the entities like the Keene Housing, instituting measures like reduced rental payment, not the Keene Housing per se, but other like Mascoma Meadows. We have seen reduced rental payment, reduced electrical bills. The same with Oris. We have projected that this project is going to help reduce the electric bills of their members. Environmentally, they are benefiting. If some of you have time to go to Harmony Lane, where the Keene Housing has one of its facilities, you will see the beauty of these clean energy systems that I'm talking about. And they use all of the savings towards improving buildings. And I know there are a lot of people who are actually in the queue, knowing or waiting to actually get accommodation from Keene Housing. So all of these savings will enable Keene Housing and similar entities to build additional affordable housing for the low moderate income community. So if you are touched by the good works that we are doing and you manage an entity, a non-profit, low moderate income community, please reach out and we'll be happy to collaborate with you. I'll hand over to Emily to take over. Thank you so much for listening.
So thank you, Ryan West and Jude Nuru, for your very interesting presentations. I'm still back at the description of the solar farm. I think that was an especially creative solution to multiple community. I think I'm tired of using the word problems. I think they're just life and just issues to be solved, and we can solve them in creative solutions like that. So applaud the Revision Energy for their participation and leadership and the community that was involved in that. And I hope that that idea, among others, spread to lots of other local communities over the next months and years. And we saw lots of examples of how we can and must innovate to ensure a just and equitable transition to a clean energy economy. I'll give you another housekeeping reminder that questions can be entered into the chat, but will be held till after all three speakers are done. Our third and final speaker is here in the room. That's Joshua Meehan, and he is Executive Director of Keene Housing. Josh brings a national and local perspective to the intersection of providing equitable housing solutions during a climate crisis and our clean energy transition. Josh serves on several local and national boards, including the Public Housing Authority's Directors Association, to name one. He earned his bachelor's degree in political science from Hampshire College and his master's of public policy from Tufts. For more on Josh's interests and accomplishments, please visit his conference bio after the session today, and be sure to ask him questions too. And then following Josh's presentation, we will take a few minutes to get organized for our Q&A period, and then take questions from the audience and from online. All right, so please join me in welcoming Josh Meehan to present on clean energy transitions rural case studies.
Well, thank you, Emily, for the introduction, and thanks to those of you in the room for being here and those who are joining us online too. I am the least technical of today's speakers, but I am sort of, I think, a natural person to go last in this presentation, because what we do at Keene Housing is sort of take a lot of what's been discussed thus far and try and do it on the ground and see how it's going. So that's why we're starting off talking about our journey to net zero, and it's because we're nowhere near there yet, but we're getting there. So this thing you see here, 035, is a goal that we made for ourselves in 2014, which was to get to a place where we're relying entirely on renewable energy sources by 2035. But of course, saying that is the easy part. The hard part is figuring out how do we do that. And before I dive into that, I do want to give a little perspective as to who Keene Housing is, because I think it is important to understand who we are in order to understand the limitations that we face, the challenges that we face, but also sort of the why. Why are we trying to do this? So we are a municipal corporation, technically a housing authority created by the city of Keene in 1965. We own or manage 600 units of affordable housing and some commercial spaces in Keene and Marlborough and Swansea. In addition to that, we administer 765 housing choice vouchers. So that's folks who have a voucher to rent in the marketplace. And when we talk about LMI, so a lot of what we're talking about today is low and moderate income, right? Well, what does that actually mean? Well, for us, the vast majority of people we serve are what's defined as extremely low income. So those are folks who earn less than 30% of area median income. For example, a family of four here in Cheshire County, that's a family of four with an income around $26,500 a year. We are funded primarily through federal contracts and the rent we collect from residents. We participate in this very interesting deregulation demonstration by the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development called the Moving to Work Deregulation Demonstration. Why that's important to know for this presentation is that it gives us some flexibility around our funding that allows us to be a little bit more innovative and a little bit more entrepreneurial than most housing authorities can. So when we talk about some of the things we've accomplished, it's important to know that that's happening in the background. So we're a little atypical in that way. Also, what often comes as a surprise to people when we talk about housing authorities is that we get $0 from the city of Keene and $0 from the state of New Hampshire. All of our funding comes from federal contracts and from rent we collect, although we do pursue state grants, for example, when they come along, and we have done that successfully. And another important point when we talk about low mod income and programs that are being designed or are designed in the state of New Hampshire to make it easier for low and mod income people to participate and to benefit from things like tax credits and other incentives to do solar in particular. Our residents generally don't pay their own utilities. Generally, we do. And one of the biggest challenges we've had in this regulatory environment and statutorily is making rule makers understand that when we, Keene Housing, benefit from energy efficiency initiatives, even though our tenants' rents don't go down, those savings we repurpose for other things that benefit them and the people on our waiting list. So we'll talk about that a little bit more. So the first question is, why should an affordable housing provider even care about this notion of getting to carbon neutrality? We got a lot of challenges, and those include funding constraints. We don't have a ton of money coming in from the Fed. We have these contracts that fund us to do work for the Fed, but they don't acknowledge or fund energy efficiency work in any of that. They just fund us to operate the properties that we operate on their behalf. We already have deferred capital needs. We've got windows that need replacing and roofs and old HVAC systems that need replacing. So the opportunity costs are high for us. Every dollar we invest in a solar project or some other energy efficiency related activity is $1 less that we have to do the other thing like the roof or the new doors or what have you. We have little, although today now it's a little bit different, but when we started down this path, we had really no in-house expertise in this area at all. And in addition to that, the folks that we have working for us don't have extra time and a ton of bandwidth to learn how do you do this work and why is it even important. While this is starting to change, when we got going with this idea in 2014, there was little to no state support or initiatives for what we were trying to accomplish. So we had to figure out how to do it on our own initially. So why did we do it? Well, we did it because it saves us money. And yes, it helps us help save the world too, and we recognize that, and that's very important. But what my board wants to make sure is that if we're taking that opportunity to invest in an energy initiative, that there's a payback there that we can really wrap our arms around, or else, for all the reasons I just described on the last slide, it doesn't make a lot of economic sense for us to do this stuff. But as I did say, we have the ability to repurpose every dollar we save in energy to maintain our existing stock, to develop new housing, which we desperately need here, and to provide better resident services to our residents. And again, for a little context here, before we started down this path, we were spending about $1.3 million a year on energy and water. So to get started with this, the first thing we did was bring in somebody who knows what they're doing. So we through a competitive process, got an energy consultant who's helped us. We also got a grant from the Community Development Finance Authority to help us build some capacity around understanding solar energy. And the big real first step for us was benchmarking our entire portfolio. How much energy are we using? How much water are we using? And then how do we compare to other portfolios that look substantially similar to ours? Then once we had that baseline established, then we're able to start to implement strategies and then track to see how they're going, because maybe they're not going that well. Maybe they're going great. How do we know? Well, now we know because we've baselined everything. And one thing we've done to sort of help push us along a little bit is we joined the Department of Energy's Better Buildings Challenge. Through that challenge, we had committed to reducing our water and energy consumption by 20% by 2025. So we started with the low-hanging fruit stuff, and many of you here today already know what that is, but we didn't going into it. So of course, that's water. So we got to the low flow toilets, replacing flappers in toilets on a regular basis because those things start to erode over time and you lose water. You didn't really know about that. We have a really robust community garden program, which comes with spigots on the outsides of the units, some of which were being used responsibly, others that were not. So we put some controls in there. And we started looking at our water bills in a different way. Used to be just the accounting folks would get the bill and pay the bill, get the bill, pay the bill. Nobody was stopping to compare old bills to new ones to see, whoa, the water bill for North and Gilsum doubled since last time. What's that about? And what we actually were able to do just by doing that simple step was to actually find leaks in pipes underground that we never would have known because the water flows down and we would never see it. So I'm very happy to say we achieved the Better Buildings Water Challenge in 2019. So we hit that one really fast. And since 2014, you can see we've reduced our, we've saved over $250,000 in water bills. And then we started doing the energy efficiency stuff. So with technical assistance from EPA through that Better Buildings Challenge, we learned how to do blower door testing ourselves. So our maintenance crew has a blower door test. They know how to use it. They know how to record the results. And we actually did a blower door test on every unit we own. And now we have, again, baseline data for that. And now we know where the leaks happen. So we don't have to do them all the time, but we do them periodically. And as we acquire new properties that are also old, like most of ours, we do that right away, record it, and go in and make the changes that need to be made to start to seal up those buildings. We've installed LEDs throughout almost the entire portfolio at this point. There's a few that are not done yet, but we are kind of working our way through it. And with help from Eversource and the Resilient Buildings Group, we've started to replace, some of you may be familiar with these things called electric thermal storage heating units. It's a post-World War II British technology that was really in vogue in the 80s. I won't go into the details, but let's just say it made a lot of sense then, makes no sense now. And thanks to Eversource, we've been replacing those ETS units with air source heat pumps. And I can't stress enough how helpful Eversource has been. They've covered the entire cost of that conversion, and it's very, very expensive undertaking. But you can see we're saving a ton of energy already, and again, a lot of money. So $320,000 in energy cost savings from 2014 to 2020. All the data ends in 2020 because we're not done collecting 21 yet. So this is an example of the savings we got from converting from those old electric thermal storage units to these mini split units. And this was our pilot. We did a pilot at a smaller property first to see how it would work. And basically the way you can understand this is gray is good. So gray is savings, the difference between baseline and where we are today. So after having that under our belts, we felt confident to go ahead and start doing these ETS conversions on a larger scale at more properties, and we're working our way through that now. So this will look familiar because Jude just gave you this exact same picture, I think, although his was bigger, so you could probably see it better. But again, this is Harper Acres. So what we started doing once we felt really confident that we had done a good job of understanding and starting to address that low-hanging energy efficiency fruit, then we turned our attention to generation. And that's really what we're focused on right now. We've got 3 solar projects completed, and this was the first one, Harper Acres. This is down on Castle Street. Anybody who's a local, I hope you've been down to Castle Street, not only because it looks really cool with the solar, but we've also done a ton of work to build beautiful gardens down there. And I just invite people to come down and check it out because it looks great. And so basically you can see the same sort of information that Jude had provided. For whatever reason, we do carbon offsets in tons and he does them in pounds. Pounds is a bigger number, I guess it looks better, but 60 tons of carbon annually, we think we're offsetting here. And Jude did mention that these PPA arrangements, it's a solar power purchase agreement. And so it is free to us. However, if our calculations for the payback, in other words, how much we're going to save over time, are really going to pencil out, we need to buy these things. So once the investors take out their tax credits in the beginning of year 6, we have built into our models purchasing these arrays so they become ours in year 6, at which point the generation, the electricity being generated by them costs us 0 kilowatt per hour, kWs. Anyway, it's free electricity. As you know, Revision was our partner in this project. And Forest View is 38 units of family. Jude also reviewed this one. We're so proud of the offsets of 163 tons of carbon that we had to put it on this slide twice. But in any case, the really interesting thing here is this is sort of a model of where we're headed for all of our properties that have both ETS heating and the ability to do solar. And that is heat pumps and solar. We're going to buy the solar in year 6. So the electricity being produced on those roofs goes to power those heat pumps. And so now with the heat pump conversions, our residents not only are getting a higher quality heating, they're also getting air conditioning. And as things warm up, unfortunately, the need for air conditioning is growing, especially for our elderly and disabled residents who make up 1/3 of the people we house. And then this was our last, our 3rd most recent project, North and Gilsum. Jude also talked about this one some. Same deal, installed by Revision. We're going to buy it in year 6. It's saving us a lot of money, and someday that electricity is going to be ours, all ours, and we're excited. So how's it going? How are we doing so far? I think we're doing pretty good. Now, we're not at zero yet, but we're definitely on the way to zero. So you can see on the left, we're talking about our energy and our cost, as well as how much energy we're using. And you can watch that when we put those solar panels in place, you can see that blue line start to dive. And that's what that is. And our energy costs, as we're doing all of the energy efficiency work and doing these solar installs, you can see, because we're paying a really reasonable rate for the solar power that's being generated on the roofs through the PPA, our costs steadily going down. And then in the water side, you can see, as soon as we turned our attention to water, it was fast. We figured it out real quick. And it just went bang right down. And then you can see as it starts to steady out, but it's still going down a little bit. In 2019 is where we hit our goal for the Better Buildings Challenge. So then the next question is, so what's next? Because we still have a ways to go to get to net zero, but luckily we still have some time to go. We have, in addition to those larger sites that I've been sort of calling your attention to so far, we have what's called a scattered site portfolio. And the scattered site portfolio is a bunch of 2-family and 3-family and 4-family houses all around Keene and some in Marlboro, which, by the way, when you drive by them, you don't know that they're ours, and that's the way we like it. We want you to drive by our stuff and not realize that it's necessarily affordable housing. But in any case, not that there's anything wrong with affordable housing, but we don't want it to stand out. We want it to look like everything else in the neighborhood. In fact, we want it to look better than most of the things in the neighborhood. But in any case, so we're turning our attention to the scattered sites. And in fact, we had planned on doing that this year, but for obvious reasons, it wasn't safe to go into people's units to install heat pumps. So we had to delay everything because of COVID. But our plan for the coming year is to get to those scattered site properties. And the ones that have those electric thermal storage units, they're going to get converted to heat pumps. We're doing windows at almost all of them. And, you know, windows isn't always the best payback, but we've got some old properties with some pretty old windows, and it's time to get to those. And then quite a bit of insulation work. There's minimal work was done in the mid-2000s, and it's, you know, the technology is much better. And again, thanks to Eversource and Resilient Buildings Group, it's very much affordable for us to do that low-hanging energy efficiency work. So we're going to be doing that in 22. And then we've got 2 big heat pump installs to do, the last 2 of the big properties that have these old electric thermal storage units. So that's North and Gilsum and Harper Acres, both of which we saw during the presentation. So they're both going to wind up looking like Forest View, which is the one that has this is what we want them all to look like. And I'm very pleased to say that there has been some progress in the regulatory side and statutory side in New Hampshire that started to make it a little bit more interesting for us in terms of the size of the solar arrays we can build. So far, everything we've built has been behind the meter because there's no real incentive, and there's not it doesn't pencil out well to build anything more than what you use. But now, thanks to some recent changes, it's possible that we might turn our attention to something quite a bit larger in terms of solar generation. You know, our goal is to eventually, no offense to our friends at Eversource, but to not need their electricity at all and just have our own electricity. And that's what we're heading towards, I think. And then very, very timely, right now in the US Congress, there's a big debate happening around the reconciliation bill. And so that's the other infrastructure bill. And we're hoping between the infrastructure bill that's already been agreed to and the reconciliation bill that we're going to see some real serious incentives for affordable housing providers to do much deeper dives into energy efficiency. Because as I said in the very beginning, right now there's really nothing. HUD doesn't give us anything built into any of our contracts that we have with them to incent us to do this kind of work. So we're hopeful that we're going to start to see some federal investment in a more meaningful way for us to do investing into conservation and specifically generation. And the last thing I would say that we're hoping for is that bundled up in all this new legislation will be a way for us to convert our fleets to an all-electric fleet. But we have sanders, we've got plowers, and we've got some pretty big stuff. So the electric vehicles need to be available, and we're going to need charging stations on site in order to charge those things. And what I learned today from Ryan's presentation is we really should be charging those during the day. So we'll have to figure that out. But in any case, that's what we think is coming in the near future. And so we're not there yet, but we're feeling pretty good about our prospects, and we're very hopeful that by 2035, we will be net zero as an organization. So thank you very much. Thanks for listening, and thanks for coming today.
So thank you, Josh, for your interesting presentation. Are we live? Thank you, Josh, for your very interesting presentation. I think that it really encapsulates our goals here today, which is to bring together creative solutions to multiple issues we face related to energy and equity and uncertainty related to the climate crisis that we're facing. And I hope that in the Q&A session, we will have more discussion about specific details that will be useful to our audience as they move forward with projects, large and small, that involve housing and energy use and electric vehicle charging. So we're going to take a short break to get organized for our multidimensional Q&A, and so please stay tuned, and we'll be right back. Okay, so welcome back. We'll begin the Q&A part of our session. And we have some questions from the audience already in the chat. If anyone in the room would like to ask a question, you are welcome to type it into the chat, or you can, I think probably I won't walk with the microphone. Maybe you can speak loudly and I'll repeat it for the audience. So multiple ways to ask your questions. And I hope this will be a conversation among the participants, our virtual participants, as well as the people in the room, and about the solutions that you need to walk away from this year to, or this conference, this week, to make progress on your projects. So we have some questions from the audience already, so I'm just going to start with those, and then I have some questions too if we want to fill in. The first one is for Ryan, for Eversource. Can you speak to time of use rates in New Hampshire and how Eversource is working to make EV charging feasible?
Sure. Yeah. Thanks. So time of use rates is a complicated topic. But for EV charging, one thing that we're working towards, and there's actually an active regulatory proceeding going on, where we're trying to develop, address, and right now the proposal has an alternative demand rate specifically for EV charging. So it is a proposal. I mean, and I'll say it's early on in that process. And the other thing is, that program is tailored right now around our highway system in New Hampshire. And so there is more work to be done in this area and around getting it out to all customers and making it more accessible and equitable. So, but that's where a lot of the large focus has been right now. And that alternative rate is a first step towards trying to address this, address the fact that we can't have a demand charge and also ask for electric vehicles and then be charging and really kind of blow up people's bills. So that's where we're headed. And like I said, I recognize there's more work to be done, and hopefully we can, at the regulatory level, we're very much listening to stakeholders and customers to make sure we can set up programs and the rate structure that supports them. So
we'll take this. So this question is for Ryan. And Ryan, I'll ask it. This is a question from the audience. It says, will you address demand charges for apartments and condominiums? And it's related to EV charging, that those people cannot charge without paying excessive demand charges relative to the residential rates that apply to residential R-meter charging.
All right, thank you. Yeah, so what this proposal that we're working through does, as far as the alternative demand rate for EVs, in there it is, so right now is defined as DC fast charging sites and also clustered level 2 chargers. So it's a start, and it will have to evolve further down. So as we start to get to individual customers having their own EVs over time, right? But there are some technical challenges to that, and it goes back to the overall time of use rates conversation. But so back to essentially for EVs and demand charges, the proposal right now is to address DC fast chargers and clustering them, and hopefully that does open up some of the the apartments and condos complexes in the future here. So
thank you. Okay, so the next question is for Josh. Josh, can you tell us more about the DOE Building Challenge program?
Sure. It's the BBC Better Buildings Challenge, and it's DOE, and I think HUD is actually a partner with DOE in that challenge. And it's essentially a way to get both multifamily housing providers and sort of larger scale businesses to commit to some specific savings over time. And the incentive provided through the program is fairly limited, if I'm going to be honest about it. It's really pushing you to meet a challenge with some opportunities for technical assistance, but there are many opportunities for folks to get together and share ideas. And if and when you hit your challenges, you get a big shiny trophy. It's made of glass and very pretty. And that's really the most that the challenge has done for us, really, is to help us establish goals for ourselves. And the technical assistance that we got around the blower door testing was very helpful. But I'll note, they didn't pay for the blower door testing kit, but they did pay to have somebody come to Keene from Boston and teach our maintenance crew how to use it and how to record the results.
Follow-up question. It seems like there is a lot of assistance out there for building programs that rely, but filling in with the funding is a constant challenge for getting these projects to fruition.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it really comes down to, like I was saying at the beginning of my presentation, what's the value proposition to the organization? In other words, how quickly and how much are we going to reduce our operating costs by taking these initiatives on? And it's a cost benefit analysis every single time to figure it out, because again, there's an opportunity cost there. But we've been very fortunate in that I did mention that we participate in this deregulation demonstration through HUD. That does allow us to repurpose some of our funds that we get for our voucher program for activities that ensure the long-term viability of our housing portfolio. And of course, energy efficiency is a huge part of making those buildings that are, some of our properties are from the 30s and 40s, others the 60s and 70s and 80s. And if we want those to be available to the people who call them home and folks like them for generations, we need to make these investments, and energy efficiency is just a huge part of that plan.
So I'd like to get back to energy efficiency, but first I'd like to ask a question of Jude. Jude, Revision Energy has been instrumental in creative funding for renewable energy projects, and my question is, how is this field evolving? Are you finding it well-funded? And what are the challenges you face in doing the projects that you can see are beneficial to communities and cost-effective for communities that you work with?
The biggest driver is the federal tax incentives.
Okay, so Jude, we're having some technical difficulties here hearing you. We're getting some of the gist of what you're saying about the funding, but can you repeat your answer? We reset and we'll give it another try. So Jude, it looks like you might be at Revision's offices. If there's a pair of headphones, we're thinking that that might help us hear you. We're not able to hear your answer, so I'll come back to you in a few minutes. In the meantime, I think we should talk more about energy efficiency. I believe you mentioned, Josh, that the first and cheapest kilowatt hour is the one you don't produce. And so in all discussions of clean energy, we should be talking about energy efficiency in parallel or even in anticipation to build capital for our renewable energy priorities. So I guess I have questions of both you and Ryan. But how about I'll start with Ryan. So this question's for Ryan. New Hampshire Saves has been held up at the Public Utility Commission in New Hampshire, but is an innovative program. Can you talk about how it changed and how much funding and the cost-effective aspects of the New Hampshire Saves program that will be that the renewable energy and the energy efficiency community are so looking forward to?
Yeah, so I apologize. I don't know all the details on New Hampshire Saves, but I will say that we continue to look at energy efficiency as another track and supporting clean energy, right? So we cannot agree more around we need to continue energy efficiency programs, and we look at also the future in the energy efficiency space is also being able to actively use or curtail or not use energy, right? And pull that into what we're looking at as far as the overall operation of the grid. And how do we optimize those resources on top of actual solar or actual generators? And so it is a very important area for us. And so I apologize, I don't know the specifics on New Hampshire Save about why it was or where it's currently at, but we can follow up and we'll make sure we can get an answer on energy efficiency. But I would say in general, we're very much interested to continue those programs. I think what the example Josh gave, that we have multiple examples of that across the state, and it's a very it turns into actual energy savings, right? And it's tangible, and we know there's benefit there. So we can follow up on the New Hampshire Saves portion of it.
Yeah, if I could, I would just sort of put an exclamation point on that. The heat pump conversions that we talked about, I mean, just at Forest View, that project, Eversource came in with almost $500,000 for that project. They cover the cost of the architecture, the engineering, everything. There's no way that we could have made that pencil out absent that partnership. So we're very appreciative.
Yeah, and it goes to that program has a
so
lot.
how about you have a goal for net zero by 2035, and you said that you're anticipating meeting that through energy efficiency and then renewable energy. Do you feel like your plan is complete? Or do you feel like you're working on your early part of a plan that?
I would say we're probably, it's always dangerous when I try and do like math off the cuff, but I'd say we're like 30% of the way there. The tipping point for us will be if we can do a solar project at scale that supplies all of our electricity. I think we're at like 3.2 megawatts we consume in a year across our portfolio, although we just added 48 units to the portfolio, so I got to add that back in. But I think that's our next big push. So we've got a couple of these projects to take out these old ETS units and put in heat pumps. But I think the thing that's going to get us over the finish line will be a very large solar array. But again, the opportunity costs are very, very high in doing something like that. So we've got a lot of work to do, but I'm pretty confident we'll get there by 2035.
Well, that brings me to the electrification of the grid, because your units will be adding electric load and shedding fossil fuel load for heat, which is, of course, a climate, is climate advantaged. But you'll have to find more renewable energy in order to meet that load. So my next question is, again for Ryan, is the New England ISO grid ready for large-scale distributed energy resources, DERs?
Yeah, so one of the it's a great question, because we look at our challenge, and I started off my conversation with location, right? And so you've got regional impacts at the ISO New England level, and then we come down to where we're focused in on is local adoption, right? And so we're both acting as a transmission operator for the region in our states, and then we're also as our distribution operator. So New England we are constantly balancing as new solar and new renewable energy shows up on our distribution system with the overall transmission grid. And I mentioned in my little quick spiel about the history of our electric grid, that that is a dynamic that the region and the industry, we're now trying to, it's kind of flipping that equation on its head. And so I will say ISO New England, it is forecasted daily about all the DER connected to the system. So we have a very good pulse on what is, at least expected to be there. And they are responsible, along with our transmission group, to make sure that the transmission system is reliable and is there to support. What the challenge becomes is, as if you think about the time perspective, which I brought up, solar down to the minute could be changing, and if that becomes a large enough portfolio of the overall system, then you get into some really bad scenarios of blackouts and rolling blackouts and so on. And that's where we think we need to work closely. We obviously see the benefit to the environment, and we want clean energy, but we need to make sure we've got this overall view of it, and it's going to be successful for all of us. So ISO New England does a great job. We're in really good space to keep growing in the near term, in the 3 to 5 year range. But we need to keep that projection, and it continues to get monitored and addressed year over year, and through the planning activities that they do at the regional level, and that we do, down at the distribution level.
So thank you for the answer. Jude, we'll try again a question for you. This will be our last question of the session. The Revision Energy, I believe, is on the record to say that distributed energy resources are part of the solution to resilience, and that they're not so much a problem to be solved through the distribution and transmission system, but to produce local energy that's used locally. Do you want to give us a last word on how Revision is adding to the resilience of our power grid?
Yes, thank you. I'll just pick up from the earlier question and touch on this one. So regarding to the capital issues, as I said, the biggest driver is the federal incentives. And what we are realizing is that most of the entities, nonprofit and municipals, are tax exempt. So it's really very difficult for them to build a system. But thanks to our impact investors, so we are able to put together these projects. However, the challenge that remains, as Ryan mentioned, is the location of the facility. So typically, when we are looking to build the system, we want a three-phase power to be closer. So in the event that we don't have a three-phase power closer, it tends to increase the cost of the installation, which then reduces the value, the returns on investment. And like Ryan also said, they also have challenges in order to ensure the reliability of the system. When we are building any system above 500 kW, they require a recloser, which would automatically switch the power off. It's just like a circuit breaker in the household line. So that also comes at a substantial cost, and that add to the total cost, and that is the major challenge that we are facing. But I believe Eversource is also trying out different ways to make this happen and to ensure the reliability of the system, as Ryan mentioned. So as to the resiliency, our contribution, like Josh mentioned, just let me use the Keene housing as an example. We are really using different financing mechanisms, like I mentioned, to help entities become energy resilient. So like in the case of the energy housing, by 2035, if we are able to collaborate with them to build additional system, it will give them some resilience against their energy demand. And like he mentioned, they are going to be off Eversource and rely on self-reliance on their own energy resources. So those are some of the ways that we are really contributing to building a resilient energy system in our region in collaboration with Eversource and other entities in the industry.
All right. Thank you for that answer. And that wraps up our session for today. I would like to thank everyone attending today in person and virtually. We can't do this without the audience, and we really appreciate you participating and listening, and hope that you take some good ideas away. Also, please join me in thanking our panel of speakers, Ryan West and Jude Nuru and Josh Meehan. Some housekeeping reminders. All sessions are being taped and will be available to view after the summit. Attendees will receive information via email about how to access the sessions. There are 2 events starting at 4:05, and one is an art mini mixer at Leaf Gallery on Roxbury Street, and there is live music at Brewbaker's Cafe on Emerald Street. At 4:15, the Keene Sentinel is hosting a mini mixer at the Community Journalism Center. At 5:30 to 7:30, there will be networking, live music, and food and drink at the Wyman Tavern Yard. That's an outdoor event. I encourage you to go. It's a networking event that's been fun year after year for participants in the conference. And then links to all venues for directions on event agenda online at radicallyrural.org or via the Socio app. So thank you very much for being here today, and I hope you have a great day and you stay safe.